Hey, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm John Gray, and we're just plain living.
Good morning, John Gray. It's good to have you
I'm
back.
proud to be just
I'm
plain
Peggy
living.
Burton.
And I'm Jim Fuller.
It's good to have you here too. I just haven't seen him in a while.
We have not seen John in 2
we
weeks.
had to take a trip.
I'm a little surprised you made it today, actually.
Hey, everything's good. Everything's good as gold. It's just good as gold getting old.
Now, we had a few anxious moments this morning whether or not John could actually get up on the stage or not.
Hey,
but
and
other
he
than
did
that,
good, yeah.
Right.
don't you worry about this old man.
For those of you that are wondering,
I still got a trick or two.
it's a hip replacement, right?
Yeah, I had a hip replaced, so and I'm 2 weeks away from that, and I feel like doing pretty good.
That's
My high
wonderful,
times
yeah.
have changed, and I've sort of touched on this many, many times before, but John and I have been friends for forever, and there was times I used to worry about John, and he would worry about me.
Yeah.
Can he actually get from point A to point B?
We made it.
But we
Somehow you
always
made
made it with,
yeah.
with a little help from our friends. That was self-inflicted stuff.
Yeah.
And, this is totally different. So anyways,
Self-medicated.
yeah, self-medicated, yeah.
And now you can go buy CBD oil.
Yeah.
There you
It's
go.
talking about self-medication. Now, like you go to California and you go to the Napa Valley and you go tour the wineries and you have tastings. Well, in Colorado, you go to the growing houses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they have tours and they have different kinds of pot to smoke and
Are you
different
telling me you've
strengths
been
and
there
different.
already?
No, but I mean it was on
Planning a trip?
national TV. It was on national TV, and
yeah.
people
Yeah, we
travel.
watch TV like normal people.
Yeah,
sometimes
you know.
they're- Speaking of which, this year the Tennessee legislature, which convened Tuesday of this week, is considering passing a bill to legalize medical marijuana in Tennessee. And our very own Janice Bowling is the sponsor of that in the Senate. So
I
of that
think,
bill.
I think that's a good thing.
You
Yeah.
you interviewed her the other day.
I
didn't
did,
you?
and I think that's probably she's going to be part of that video. Will be on today.
Yeah, it's on
I think it's
today's
on
show.
today's
Today's
yeah.
show. So.
Yeah,
So stay
good
tuned,
for her.
you can
Good
listen
for
to
her.
Miss Janice.
Be progressive.
Yeah, and what her legislation actually does is allocates the funds to set up the infrastructure of how you do that, because obviously the people have to be screened, and there has to be
Sure.
and there has to be some means to
Well,
dispense it. So.
I've smoked pot, don't smoke pot. I've always thought it needed to be legal because people buy it and smoke it anyway. And we don't have any control of it. We don't have any control in how it's laced. And if it were legal and
That's the horrible
controlled,
part.
if it were legal and controlled, then the government would control the process, the product, and the drug lords from Mexico, they'd lose that money. And Winston and Marlboro and all these people, because folks aren't smoking like they used to, have all these fallow grounds that they could replant into marijuana to sell at the drugstore.
Yeah.
And I think it would be, the thing about it is it would keep bad marijuana off the streets. That leads people say, oh, marijuana is a gateway drug. Well, it's only a gateway drug if something's laced into it that forces you to look for something
Almost
stronger.
anything, though, like that can be a gateway drug unless you use some brains about it.
Yeah, and I think that's the concern of
Yeah,
law
that-
enforcement. A
that
lot
is a
of
concern.
law enforcement people are opposed to that for that reason. They
Yeah.
consider it to be a gateway drug. So,
And the liquor lobby.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the liquor lobby.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong with drunks on the road and all of that. I guarantee you, there's
There's
very
a lot wrong with
very
that.
few people high on marijuana get in a fight at a bar.
Well, I saw this.
That's
Okay,
true. That's
well,
true.
We're going to do
Everything's cool.
We're going to try to do a clip from Henry Cho.
We are.
Yes, we are.
All right,
Henry
well,
Cho's
where's he
going to be
gonna
at
be?
South Jackson Civic Center this Saturday night at 7 o'clock. He's hysterical, and he's clean. You can bring your children, your grandma. So let her roll.
Henry Cho, funny guy,
He
Yeah.
is a funny guy.
clean guy.
Yeah.
One of the best I've ever seen in doing what comedians have to do, and that is have impeccable timing.
Oh yeah.
Right.
You go to his show, he will hold that punchline until you
Until you-
almost choke to death waiting
Yeah.
on it.
and then he's got
then he
it.
drops it on you.
Yeah, and Peggy hit on something else that I think makes him very unique, and it show's really clean. It's a family
It is.
show.
It's a
Yeah.
family show.
Yeah.
And not many comedians anymore do that.
And he's a member of the
His,
Grand Ole Opry now. He's on the Grand Ole Opry quite often. So, you know, they went for a long time. There's always been Minnie Pearl. There's always been comedy involved in the Grand Ole Opry.
Right.
But for several years now, they've
We
been
don't have
without
any
really a
comedy.
comedian
And that's
much.
too bad.
And now Henry has filled that spot on the Grand
Yeah.
Ole Opry, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Anyway, tickets are available. There's the information on the screen. I think they're $20, but
Probably so.
I shouldn't say that because I'm not positive, but I think they are.
Roll Titans, roll.
That's
Yeah,
right. And by the way,
they're on a roll.
congratulations to LSU,
LSU,
national champion.
SEC.
That's right.
SEC.
SEC 8-2 in bowl games.
SEC. It just means more.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Keith Barnett here at Russell Barnett Ford of Winchester. Check out the 2018 Ford F-150 as low as $34,739. That's Russell Barnett Ford on 41A in Winchester, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. And remember, my question is, why buy anywhere else?
You made the time and the sacrifice to broaden their horizons, to see their smiles, but mostly to make lifelong memories. We think it's time to do it again, just the two of you. Don't let illness or injury slow you down. The rehab team at Life Care Center of Tullahoma is ready to help you live well.
It's time for every family and business in Tullahoma to go green and recycle. Tullahoma Public Works makes it simple and easy to recycle. Just place your recyclable materials, paper, plastic, aluminum, and cardboard beside your garbage container on the same day your garbage is picked up. Your recycled materials don't have to be in a fancy container. Recycling is not only the right thing to do, it makes sense. Recycling pays. Paying to bury our garbage costs each of us. Please do your part. Let's go green, Tullahoma, and recycle.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're pleased to have joining us on the set now Angie Sowers, who is a registered dietitian and works here at Tenova Harton in Tullahoma. And this is a great time of the year probably to talk to a nutritionist because everybody wants to lose weight the first of the year.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you might want to touch on that just a little bit. I mean, there's probably healthy ways to do that, and there's probably bad ways to do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of fad diets out there that people kind of get wrapped up in, and they think those are great, quick ways to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I get questioned all the time about everything from, Weight Watchers to keto to you name it, and a lot of folks are asking what's the best method to go about losing weight and getting healthy. And there's not one size fits everybody. Everybody's needs are different, so I try to drill that down the best I can. I also like to find out a little bit about the person, like, what's their daily routine and, and height, weight, male, females, what medications they're on and those sorts of things, because you can kind of get in a little sticky situation if you don't have the background on somebody and you just tell them to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
So,
and keto is kind of a derivative, similar to low carb, or is it?
It has some low carb to it, very low carb, 60 to 70% intake coming from fats, and that kind of opens up a whole nother can of worms really sometimes, because I'm not a supporter of that diet plan. But what I do teach, and when 2020 coming on and people having new goals for the year, is diabetes management. I teach a diabetes class. It's free to the hospital. It's open to the public. They do not have to have a referral from their physician to come. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month from 3 to 4 p.m. in our private dining room at the hospital. I'm normally standing outside, waving at everybody to get them to come on down. But what I teach is low carb. I teach people what are carbs, the different types of diabetes, since there are, type 1, type 2, gestational diabetes. I explain to them how to read food labels properly. I talk to them about portion control and dining out tips, because we all like to go out to eat, but and that seems to be more and more the norm these days. Less people are cooking at home. But
that probably makes it more difficult to eat the right thing.
It can make it tricky. It can make it tricky. And then, of course, the portion sizes are usually way too much for what we're supposed to be trying to eat. So there are ways to navigate that, though. But I do try to teach the dangers of not eating properly, not taking your medications properly, and the class is geared mainly towards diabetes, but it would also help someone to come, even if they weren't diabetic, just to want to lose weight, because being mindful of your carbohydrates and knowing how to count them and how to read food label plays a hand in that as well. So when I have people call me up that said, I just want to lose weight but I'm not diabetic, I still encourage them to come to this class, just because the principles kind of work hand in hand, both to help lower glucose levels and A1Cs, but also to get weight under control as well. In fact, this Friday, I'm teaching a lunch and learn with Dr. Crater, who is new to our area. He's in internal medicine. He's one of the new physicians that sees folks at Tennova Harton, and he and I are doing a lunch and learn of living with diabetes this Friday at the hospital, and it's from 12 to 1. Now that, because it's a lunch and learn, folks do have to RSVP for that because we only have so much seating available. But this is going to be our second lunch and learn, and it was so popular the first time that we decided to host another one, just to try to get out the word about diabetes and living healthy, living right, trying to get again off to a good start.
If you're a diabetic and you don't do the right thing, it'll eventually kill you, will it not?
It has significant impact on folks' health, yes. The main complications from diabetes not being maintained properly is, folks begin to have vision problems with diabetic retinopathy. They have diabetic neuropathy in the lower limbs. They start losing sensation and feeling. They can have kidney damage, kidney failure, to the point they wind up on dialysis. And again, if you have any type of wounds, especially on diabetic folks, we do, the physicians like to check their feet and check for wounds, because if something ever gets started, it's so difficult to heal if the blood sugars are not being maintained. And so then, people can, unfortunately, when things progress to a certain stage, they can face amputations.
So you being a dietitian, I'm assuming then the way you eat is pretty important to maintaining your diabetes condition.
Yeah, a lot of times I will tell my diabetic patients that I see that, yes, your medications are important and you should take them as prescribed, but eating is probably, to me, 75% of the battle.
No kidding.
Because, and I'm not saying if you eat healthy you'll never need any medications, because unfortunately, diabetes is a progressive disease, but I feel like if folks will really, be diligent on the things they're eating to help control the blood sugars and just overall health in general, then it either decreases the amount of medication they have to have, or I have seen people be able to come off of some for, as long
Right.
as they're doing really well. But again, it depends on the disease progression and how compliant someone is with their diet.
Is it accurate to say, though, that if you follow the correct diet for diabetes, you're probably going to maintain your weight better? Or is that
It does help with weight maintenance, and with type 1, the pancreas does not produce insulin. They become insulin dependent.
Right.
With type 2, which is the most common and what most people have, it is the most common, but it's also the most preventable. If you keep your weight maintained, you stay active, try to walk, try to do some things. And I tell folks, I do not say you have to go out and join a gym. That's great. In fact, I have 2 gym memberships. But I also try to, just be mindful, cut the portions back some, just kind of being more mindful about reading food labels. And even when folks come to my class, I tell them don't go home and just have a pantry purge and throw away good food, because we all know how expensive groceries and medications and all that is. But when you go back the next time, now you have more tools in the arsenal to help you be more mindful of things that you need to buy and things you need to eat, and maybe things that need to be kind of on that every once in a while list.
right? Mm-hmm. As a registered dietitian, do you think you probably pay more attention to that and eat healthier than a normal person?
I really do, and because you have to practice what you preach.
Yes.
If I went into a patient's room to talk to them about, obesity or weight loss or their, labs being, extremely high, and I walked in and didn't kind of look like I knew what I was talking about, I'm pretty sure I'd lose credibility right at the door. And so I tell folks, I do practice what I preach, and I will tell you that with one of my pregnancies, because I have 2 children, I had gestational diabetes.
No kidding.
And so if you have gestational diabetes, then that means if you don't kind of keep on the yellow brick road and do the right things, your risk factors for developing type 2 later as you get older will be higher.
Did that had to do with your pregnancy, correct?
It did, and I was a little bit heavier at that time, and the extra stress on the body just
Right.
kind of puts things under a little bit more, stress. So that kind of caused me to have that. But again, I had to diet control and watch what I was eating. So that means now, I'm 41, I'm not getting any younger either, so I'm hitting the gym and watching what I eat exactly, because it does become more and more difficult as we get older.
Right. All right. And this Lunch and Learn's coming up this Friday?
It is the 17th from noon to 1.
Okay.
You do have to call the hospital to RSVP again, because we have limited seating for this event. But now the diabetes class that I teach is free, and they can come anytime.
So they can just call the regular number at the hospital, and they will put them in touch with whoever.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you so much for coming
Well,
by today.
thank you
Great
so much for
information.
having me.
Great information. Folks, we'll be right back right after this.
Here at Manchester Funeral Home, we know the importance of living and working in our local community, because it's those families who we serve during their time of need honorably. We believe in supporting local business and offer only 100% Batesville caskets, the best in the industry and a driver of our local economy. If you want straightforward and fair pricing while working with the people you know, choose Manchester Funeral Home, serving your community since 1932. And pre-planning and pre-funding can be the best gift you ever leave your loved ones. Call us to pre-arrange. Manchester Funeral Home. Our family, caring for your family since 1932.
If you want to be a parent, it doesn't matter how you play, what you wear, how you dance, or even what direction life takes you. You just need to be there. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care don't need perfection. They just need you.
How long has it been since you raced a cheetah? Are your tornado creating skills getting rusty? Tired of being the only one in your neighborhood who hasn't built a dinosaur? Sounds like it's time to visit the Hands-On Science Center. The Hands-On Science Center is an indoor science playground. In this museum, please touch is the rule. Join us for weekly science demonstrations on space, lasers, lizards, rocks, and a whole lot more. No two visits are ever the same, so visit often to see our ever-changing exhibits and demonstrations. The Hands-On Science Center, 101 Mitchell Boulevard in Tullahoma.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're pleased to have joining us today Janice Bowling, who is the senator for the 16th district here in Tennessee, which means she's your senator if you live in Coffee, Franklin, and what are the other ones?
Grundy, Warren, Van Buren, Sequatchie, and Marion.
All right.
7 rural counties in Middle Tennessee.
Okay, and that's kind of a wide area, I know, for you to keep up with. So I'm guessing that even when the legislature is not in session, you're probably pretty busy just taking care of your constituents.
Actually, Jimmy, I'm busier in some ways out of session than I am during session, because I'm the only senator that does town hall meetings. And so when we get out of session, I do go into each county, date certain, time certain, place certain, so that if people want to come to that, in some counties a lot of people come, some counties just a few people come, and a lot of counties some of the people come just to have a jam session, you know, about what's going on in politics. But in certain counties, people come with individual personal needs, and I see them one-on-one. But they're always welcome to call me at my office, get in touch, and they're always welcome to call me directly and if they need a meeting or just need to discuss something. So when you've got about 200,000 constituents spread over 7 rural counties, it does keep you busy when we're out of session.
I bet. Before we get started on today's topic, let's take a little stroll down memory lane.
My goodness.
I haven't seen you for a while. You started in politics, in the political arena, sometime around the early 90s. Take us through your career to this point.
In the 90s, I was minding my own business, and I had friends who wanted me to get involved in as an alderman, because there was an issue in particular. You remember the infamous bypass?
I do.
And we were all going there trying to fight it, and they said, you know, we need somebody on that side of the table, not just always having to be on this side of the table. So there were 2 people up for re-election, of course, and there were about 6 of us that ran for those 2 seats, the 2 incumbents, 2 more people, 4 more people rather, that just normal citizens, and I happened to win. Now my son said, Mama, you didn't carry any precinct. I said, no, but I got the 2nd highest number of votes.
And that's the way that works.
And as a friend of mine has always said, do you know who wins, Janice? The one who gets the most votes.
Right.
And I said, yeah, that's true. So I became an alderman, and there had been one other woman alderman at the time, and Beth Bryant.
Beth Bryant.
And I was a known Republican. That was something new back in '91.
And I'm guessing you were probably, at that point, the only Republican on the board.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Oh, for sure. And, but I found out that you discuss the issues. You might even debate the issues. You might even argue the issues. But you could go out and have a cup of coffee when it's over. And that's the thing that I think is so important, that in some ways is missing in today's politics.
People take it personal?
People take it personal. There's not as much civility. With the internet, which I'm a strong proponent of the internet, but a lot of folks, everybody thinks they're a rock star and they have their own TV program, Jimmy.
Right, right.
And they get on the internet and might say things that are half true or not true and not know. But there's a lot more to contend with. It used to take a while to get a letter from somebody, and now you can get their tweet or their email in a flash.
You served what, 15, 16 years.
15.
And a large portion of that, though, you were chosen by your colleagues on the board to be the vice mayor.
I was the mayor pro tem, and I think what has really helped me as a state senator, I was on the airport authority. I was on the housing authority. I was on the industrial development authority board, and the different boards, the TUB in particular, I was on there when we decided to get fiber in Tullahoma. And we had done the due diligence for a year, and we had investigated everything, and this was about the turn of the century. And Jerry Cooper, our mutual friend, he had carried the legislation in 1999 as a state senator that enabled the utility authorities and boards to provide broadband, telephone, and internet service. So we were acting on that law, and I've been trying to amend that law and take out the electric footprint restriction that's on the local utilities.
And that would be something that would allow them to expand beyond.
For instance, if Schmid wanted fiber, then Tullahoma would be able to take them. And ironically, in Tullahoma, people who have asked to be annexed, they've been annexed, but if they were Duck River Electric customers, they live inside the city limits, but they cannot get the tub, they cannot get fiber to the premise because they are not in the electric footprint. So that's a very restrictive law. AT&T put that on there if we want to ask who. And I've been fighting that since I got up there.
Nashville. You also spent some time working with Congressman Van Hillary.
I did, and that was about 1994, I guess. So I'd been an alderman about 3 years. I was a known Republican in this area, and so he came and asked if we would help with his campaign, which we did. And then his administrative assistant, Susan Hirschman, came to me after the election and said, Janice, I've gotten to know you, and I think that you would be a great field rep. And would you be interested? Well, up until that time, I was full-time wife, mother, homemaker, community volunteer. I had not worked out of the home. 2 of our children were going to college, and another one was in high school. And I asked Temple, he said, you know, I think we should be willing to make that contribution. I said, do you have a mouse in your pocket? No, what is that? But after 3 months, I became the district director in the congressional office, and I traveled in 11 counties from Hardin County to White County.
You later ran for that office.
It was a little bit of a different configuration because former Senator Lincoln Davis had been part of the redistricting, and that district that had gone from Hardin County up to Campbell County then was reconfigured and brought in the Sequatchie Valley, which plays up in my life later because I ran in the counties that I now serve. But at that time, they were drawn into that district because they were staunch Democrat counties. So that was, yes, that all, your life has a way of doing that, Jimmy.
Yeah, right. You didn't win that election, but you later ran for state senate, Tennessee State Senate, and at that point, it was pretty predominantly Democrat in the state and in the legislature. You won that election rather handily, if I recall.
Actually, right at the cusp was when it was beginning to change. I think Ron Ramsey had just been named the Speaker of the Senate, and so, but the district that my friends encouraged me to run in, I need to get some new friends, Jimmy. That district, 7 rural counties, all 7 of the courthouses Democrat. A lot of people didn't realize that, but all of them rather blue, had never elected a Republican state senator. And that was interesting because I did go out and I didn't put party on my ticket. I just had, this is what I believe in. If you believe in this, would you please consider voting for me?
Right.
And a lot of wholesale grassroots electioneering. And I won with about 65% of the vote.
Right. And weren't you the first woman to hold that job since
for certain.
Ever?
Forever.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right. First woman, first Republican, and very rural, very difficult to campaign in as much as you can't get from here to there. So when you go from my house to Dunlap, you know, you have to go around the mountain and over the river and through the woods. So there's not straight interstate. You're mostly on back roads. You're mostly on state roads, and they're good, but it does take longer. And but I would not trade that for my colleagues who serve in downtown Nashville or downtown Memphis or downtown Knoxville. I love my rural district, and I love the people of the rural district. They are straightforward, as they say, plain talk's easy understood. They are solution driven. Another thing that they say that I use it a lot, if there's a problem, there's a solution. If there's no solution, there's no problem. And I think a lot of people just want to talk about the problem. They like to talk about the solution, and I do too, so that's good.
You were somewhat of a pioneer, because a lot of the places you were, or the offices you served in during this time, you were the only woman there.
And the only Republican.
And the only Republican. Was it tough being a woman in those positions, you think?
Jimmy, I've never entered into a situation saying, I hope they treat me correct because I'm a woman. As a matter of fact, one time as an alderman, they said, oh my goodness, we haven't put a woman on this commission. Janice, we want to put you on it. I said, no thank you. And they said, oh, well, we need a woman. I said, I know. But what you really need is who's best qualified to serve the people. And if you think I'm qualified to do that, I'm glad to take it. But if you're putting me there just because I'm a woman, I don't think that's fair to the people or to me. And so they weren't, you know, they didn't expect that response. What I did find out though, Jimmy, now this was back in the 90s when I was district director, and I would go into the rooms and there would be mostly men sitting around the table and going into these meetings and whatever, and I was me. I was friendly, I was respectful, I was had done my homework, I knew what to share and what to do at that particular meeting, and if I had been a man, I think I could have walked up to the table and it would be, hell, you know, welcome fella, well met here. And as a woman, some of them would look at me like, I would say, hello, I'm Janice Bowling, and I'm representing your new Congressman, Van Hillary. They would look at me like, yeah, but not for long, you know. But as it turned out, he was there as forever. I mean, you know, he served 6 terms, 5 terms, and I had quit right before his last term because I knew he was running for state office. So it was a pioneer time, but I never felt slighted. I did feel that I had to earn my place at the table, and once I earned it, I carried all 11 of those counties when I ran for the congressional seat.
Amazing. You've served 2 terms in the Tennessee State Senate, is that correct?
I'm on the last year of my 2nd term.
Your term expires this year in 2020, and so are there plans for you to run again?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, you're the first person on television or radio who's asked me that direct question.
Unbelievable, because she's on television and radio a lot.
But I am running again, and would appreciate the consideration of your vote.
We'll be right back in just a moment.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
Let's talk a little bit about this upcoming session of the General Assembly, which starts January 14th, I believe.
Next Tuesday.
You've got a piece of legislation that you worked on last year that I suspect that you're probably going to bring back this year, and that is medical marijuana. Early on when I met you, I probably would have thought that'd be the last thing Janice would be supporting, but now you are, and for what I think is good reasons, and you want to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Jimmy. And when you thought I would be the last person, I would have agreed with you that there's no way. And so when we, 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, there was a bill for medical cannabis, medical marijuana, and the young man from the House who was carrying it is a good friend, and we serve on government ops together, and he came up and he said, Senator Boland, we're going to need your vote. And it was Jeremy Faison, and I said, Jeremy, how dare you ask me for my vote? You know I've worked against the opioid crisis. You know I carried the legislation that repealed the Intractable Pain Act of 2001 that had given legal cover. It was well-intentioned legislation that turned out to have horrible unintended consequences. And so I had carried the legislation that repealed that in 2015. I said, and now you're wanting same song, second verse? And he said, Senator Boland, just read the material. Just read the research. Look up Dr. Raphael Meshulam from Israel and his research. I said, Jeremy, I'm going to have to vote on this in judiciary, so I will study the issue. I don't take my votes based on, putting my finger in the air and seeing what everybody else is going to do. I will do my homework, but I can't see it changing my mind. And after I read the research and read the realities and read the facts, 33 states have already passed medical cannabis, not because they're trying to legalize marijuana. Medical cannabis has strong medical implications. It can actually benefit at least 33 conditions that are well known of. And what my legislation would do would create a medical marijuana committee, and so, well, not a committee, but a commission, and that would be staffed with doctors, with agronomists, with lawyers, with law enforcement people, and those people then would create I had the bylaws, they would create the policies and procedures. I'm not a doctor, I can't say, but I know what I've studied, and I know a lot about medical cannabis now that I did not know 2 years ago. And the more I studied, the madder I got at Big Pharma, because it was Purdue Pharmaceutical that led our whole nation down this horrible opioid crisis intentionally by getting pain first pronounced to be the 5th vital sign. So we grew up knowing if you had some pain, you need to go to the doctor, something needed to be fixed. Well, they were then saying, pain, you've got to cure pain. Well, pain is a symptom. You don't want to get rid of that symptom that's giving you good warning. You want to have the underlying cause tended to. But it got to the point where the doctor was supposed to say, blood pressure, this, this, and this. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain today, Jimmy? And that's very subjective. And so people who were trying to skirt the law and medical professionals who were skirting the law, that gave them license to kill. Because opioids were never intended, Oxycontin was never intended for long-term pain management, and certainly not in the numbers that were being dispensed. And it does not take long before someone, whether it's a homemaker who's gone in for some minor surgery and given some, or a young athlete who's had an injury that is prescribed the Oxycontin and the other opioids, all of those things were leading to this crisis of addiction, of overdose. Over 2,000 a year in Tennessee have died. And Jimmy, that's touched everybody. Everyone knows somebody, whether their child died, their husband died, their parent died. It's not only the deaths, it's all the hearts that are broken that are left behind, or the lives that have been ruined. And this is not necessary. There are other things that can be given for pain. Medical cannabis is one of the things.
And you feel like that's something that's actually going to help deal with the opioid crisis that we already faced.
In the states that have passed medical cannabis, there's been over a 14% reduction in the sale of opioids, but equally important, or maybe even more important, 24.6 6, 7, or 8, so let's just say almost 25% reduction in opioid deaths. Now, that year that it was 2000,
that's phenomenal.
500 people would be alive today, you know, statistically.
Right.
And so that's something, that's huge. And not only that, once you get people from never getting on the opioid, you don't have to get them off of it. They were given the medical cannabis, which is not addictive. You know, a lot of times the literature had said, oh, it's addictive, it's a gateway drug. It is not. It is neither of those. And neither has there ever been an overdose death of medical cannabis or of marijuana. But I'm talking about the medical aspect of it. I'm not talking about recreationally, because in 1988 and in 1992, Dr. Raphael Mechoulam of Israel discovered the endocannabinoid system in the human body. And the receptors for the marijuana, for the THC, are the kinds of receptors that don't create an addiction. The kind of receptors that accept the opioids, they do. That there is an addiction there. Excuse me. And so when you look and see that we have within our bodies, the central nervous system has the cannabinoid 1, the THC receptor. The peripheral nervous system has the CBD2 or the CBD receptor, and then there's also receptors on the immune cells. Now think of the medical implications that have been discovered internationally. Israel's tremendous, but because it's been a Schedule I drug in America, you can't research it unless you have a waiver. And this is where my bill last year really, I think, encouraged me so much. In Alabama, in 2014, they had decriminalized CBD, and at the same time gave $1 million a year to the University of Alabama in Birmingham, their medical research center, to the Department of Neurology, because obviously where those receptors are, neurology is one of the overlying disciplines that they would be looking at. So the head of the Department of Neurology last year had called a state rep, Mike Ball, down in Alabama, and said, Mike, you carried that legislation in 2014, and I've been doing the research. We've got to get that available to the people of Alabama. There's so many medical reasons. And he said, let's work on a bill. So they looked at all the different states, because 33 states have already passed it. And they looked all around, and I had filed my bill by then, last year. So one day in January of last year, I had Mike Ball came into my office and said, Senator Bowling, I'm Representative Mike Ball. I know more about you than you know about me. I was an investigator for the Alabama Bureau of Investigation. I said, that's not how to walk into a room and win a friend.
Exactly.
And he said, but what I really know is that you are carrying this legislation, and Dr. Svorsky, the head of the Department of Neurology at UAB, found your bill online. He called me and said, we don't need to create a bill. Here is exactly what we need. And I tried to take what was working in 33 states, eliminate
so you
what
really
wasn't.
had a lot of data there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not something unknown.
There's data. There's always, there's people who have gone online and found out, and you can't believe everything online, but there are certain things that you can look at verified research, because Harvard has done research, several universities, MTSU has done research. So there's research there. Israel is a plethora of research. And it's not like all of a sudden, I wonder if we used medical cannabis with that. No, 33 states are already doing it, some better than others. And so what really encouraged me last year was if a doctor who's the director of the Department of Neurology looked at all the different programs across the United States and said, this bill does what we need. That was an honor. It was humbling.
Sure.
And I was just so glad that they passed it in Alabama. But in Tennessee, I was asked to collaborate and cooperate with another person who was carrying the legislation, and I did, and we came forward with a good bill. And it was being presented, but the night before it was presented, there was an amendment added to it.
Right.
That the man that was then carrying it, General subbed it, so
Right.
put it on the shelf till this year. But with that amendment that he was adding that restricted the modalities, the delivery system for it, to suppositories or transdermal patches, there's so much research and so much formulation. The doctor should determine the modality,
Right.
not a legislator. And I would hope that the commission would allow the medical science that's been discovered to determine whether it should be a gel cap or an edible or any number of ways, lotions, tinctures, oils. There are ways that it can be delivered, and I think all of those should be available to the patient. We should not throttle the whole process initially. We should allow that commission to do the research themselves and determine who got to determine the modality.
How optimistic are you that this is going to happen for you this year, or for the people of Tennessee?
I tend to be an optimistic person, but I am very optimistic. Yesterday, I hosted a symposium that lasted from 10 o'clock till 2 in Nashville, and I had invited the TBI, the Sheriff's Association, the Tennessee Police Chiefs Association, the Department of Safety, all of the law enforcement, because they were the ones that have been, taught, you got to fight it, you got to fight it. And in fact, they weren't aware of a lot of the facts that are now scientifically proven. And the head of the TBI had said, there's no medical indication for marijuana ever. Well, he's wrong.
Yeah.
And he's wrong because he's read misinformation, some of it put out by the big pharma.
Right.
And because there's definitely going to be a conflict when you go to more of a plant-based medicine that has an entourage of oils. God can do things better than we can, Jimmy.
Right. Unbelievable. You're exactly right.
His business card says, I'm God and you're not.
Right. So the legislation that you're proposing actually sets up the infrastructure to be able to manage this.
Yes.
Once it's...
Okay, the infrastructure, and in Alabama, in full disclosure, they bifurcated my bill. My bill had an 18-month fast track. And the first 4 months were going to be the setup of the commission. Because if you just all of a sudden say, we're going to allow medical cannabis in Tennessee, and we'll issue some licenses, and we'll try to get some regulations, I tried to explain to the men, I said, listen, it's like we're going to have a dinner party. We've got to plan the menu, then we've got to make the grocery list, then we have to go shop, then we have to be prepared with everything that we need to present a meal to our guests.
I like your terminology there, so I explain to the men, because that's not something we'd be good at.
No, the doctor was saying, well, we'll just, and I said, how are you going to issue the license if you don't have the commission who's determined who's going to be entitled to a license?
Right.
And how much a license is going to cost, and what is the license going to cover? Well, they can figure that out. I said, no, you don't start going to the grocery store when the guests have arrived.
Right.
You've got to do it sequentially and orderly and line on line. So that's what they did down there. They created a committee that has now come forward, and there'll be a commission. They already have the rules for who can purchase, who can do this, who can grow. What are the securities that'll have to be around the grow houses, and third-party testing with independent labs to make certain that there's no heavy metals or anything else in there. I mean, we don't want to just be the Wild West.
Right.
We don't need to. We've already seen what is working effectively. My goal is to get the safe product to the patient as quickly as possible with as little confusion. So the first 18 months, setting up the commission, and then getting limited numbers of licenses initially in each of the grand divisions and in each of the 4 main metropolitan areas. I want to make sure that it's going to be distributed across the state, not all of it here or all of it there, but it would be across the state. Initially, the license would be a 3-tier. That person, that group of people, those investors would have to have oversee cultivation, production, and the dispensing. And then you've also got transportation needs, and you've got lab needs. But you need the rules. People need to know what they're getting into. And because if there's just the Wild West and mass confusion, as it was in a couple of states, it can take years, and it can start costing the state money.
So you think this is doable, that we could get this done this year?
Yeah, I think it's doable. And yesterday, you said you saw me on television last night.
I did, yes.
I've had emails and texts all morning and phone calls offering to help. More media wants to talk. So, Jimmy, I've had to turn down all kinds of media today. I said, I'm already scheduled in Tullahoma, Tennessee. I can talk to you this afternoon.
That's the kind of girl Janice is.
So we had, it was interesting. The media was there from all over the state yesterday.
Right.
And by the rules, the Senate rules, I had to notify the public. You know, I thought, I hope this doesn't scare off the law enforcement.
Yeah.
It didn't. And so we had about 35 people in attendance. Mm-hmm. And then we had the media. And there was probably 35 media.
Yeah.
So it was a very informative meeting, and I had my friend that I met last year who told me he knew more about me than I knew about him. He came from Alabama. He lives in the Huntsville area, and he shared with them how he, as a former investigator with the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, went from totally being predisposed to being against it, just as I was, to studying it, just as I did. And so we were running on parallel tracks. And what he told me to tell Tennessee is that Alabama has beaten Tennessee one more time, and they were using our own playbook.
Oh my goodness!
I said, "Oh, that's insult to injury."
Yeah.
But he came up, and then we had a panel with me and with David Hairston, who is the chairman of Safe Access Tennessee, groups of people who know that medical cannabis would benefit them, some of whom are finding it in other states, and we shouldn't be making criminals out of people who are trying to get medical
No, that's a whole another problem, filling up the jails. That kind of thing, you know.
Well, as you said that, my bill had a $24 million positive fiscal note and a $2 million reduction in the Department of Corrections cost, because we wouldn't be filling up prison with people who were trying to get relief for a chronic condition or whatever.
And you folks who might think your legislators are not responsible sometimes spending money, when you submit a piece of legislation, there is a physical cost attached to that, and it's studied, and and they tell you what it's going to cost.
And so mine was positive.
Right.
It was going to
which
bring...
is really unusual.
Oh, very unusual. Yeah. But the commission, there would be oversight with the Department of Agriculture in the growing process of it, and then there of course would be oversight with business people, and then with medical people, and with law enforcement. So I tried to make certain we had done everything, and yesterday one of the participants asked Mike Ball, Representative Ball, what do you think is the best program that's out there? If you would tell us to look at a state, which would it be? And he said, well, we have studied a lot of the states, and he said, and quite honestly, Dr. Sparsky had studied a lot of the states, and that's why we chose Senator Bowling's bill. It was better because it took good parts in many of the states and put them together in one bill. And it was just plain talk, common sense. It wasn't, as I say, I live amongst rocket scientists, but I'm not one. And so it wasn't rocket science. It was just common sense.
Janice, thank you so much for coming by today. And I got to tell you, all the media does want Janice today, and it was totally luck that I was in line at this point. Janice, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. It's so good to visit with you.
Nice to visit with you again. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Smoking tobacco accounts for 3 of every 10 fire deaths in the United States.
Tullahoma Fire Department need you en route to a structure fire, 202 Main Street. Heavy smoke showing. Neighbors advise child trapped inside.
Lighters, matches, and associated smoking paraphernalia are the leading cause of preschooler fire deaths. We as firefighters know that most structure fires can be prevented.
I've got one! Command, this is primary search. We have a victim. Need EMS to meet us at the front door.
Please help us to give you a fighting chance. This can be prevented. Contact the Tullahoma Fire Department for a free home safety inspection.
What's a Tennessee vacation? It starts off like any road trip, and then, boom, adventure and thrills everywhere you look, which happens to be some of the most beautiful scenery in the country. Music here, history there, and all kinds of green in between. Come relax and unwind, or bring the crowd for some stargazing, or stargazing. Whatever you do, come hungry and expect an awesome soundtrack. It's all right here in Tennessee. We're playing your song. For a free vacation guide, visit tnvacation.com.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
All right, folks, we're back, and I'm glad to have with me again today one of my buddies, now two of my buddies. Got Mr. Winston Brooks, my man. There used to be a show on television called Our Miss Brooks. Remember that? She was a school. No, you're too young. No, I'm too young. She was a school teacher, but it was a great television show. So this is our Mr. Brooks right here, and now he's coupled up with our infamous and famous fire chief, Richard Chastain.
Wow, I didn't even get any applause.
Hey, this is for Winston.
So it's great to be here.
Glad to have you. I'm glad to be. I hadn't been here in a couple of weeks, and I'm glad. I mean, what a better way to come back than with the two of you guys.
Well, we're here. We're glad to see you up and around. We were worried about you.
How do I draw to this pair?
Well, there's so much interest going on Tullahoma that we got to come down here and give you an update. What's going on?
Double trouble me, man.
My goodness. Yeah, sure. Well, so. There's been a lot of great publicity going on about Tullahoma, and maybe you've seen some of the publicity on TV, in print, on the internet. First of all, the state of Tennessee Department of Tourist Development came out with their new Tennessee Vacation Guide.
I saw that.
And I should have brought one down here to show you, but we're featured on the cover with the Short Springs Natural Area and the famous waterfall there, Machine Falls. So that's going out all over the state and all the visitor centers. Wow. Machine Falls.
How good is that?
For Tullahoma. Isn't that great? And that's such a great asset for the city, and it brings in a lot of visitors. Every time I'm out there, parking lot's full, and most of the cars that are there are from outside the county. And so it's just a beautiful area. We're very blessed to have
Fran
that.
and I got married at Rutledge Falls.
That's very beautiful too.
You know, so we have a lot of water features that are really, really easy to get to, very accessible, and just absolutely incredible.
That's right. Well, back in July when the state came down here to take photos, they hit Rutledge Falls and then they went to Machine Falls. And if you hadn't been out to Machine Falls, if you go out there now and do the Laurel Bluff Trail, you'll be able to count at least almost half a dozen waterfalls out there that you can't find if you just do the Machine Loops Fall. So it's a beautiful space out there. So then we had some other great publicity. We had the world's tallest firefighter, and I think Chief Chastain might be able to speak better about how this all came about.
Well, I was watching the city board meeting last night, and I saw a young man pull his shoes and socks off and lay down in the floor of City Hall, and I thought, what in the world are these guys doing? So explain what you were doing.
Okay, so back in April of last year, we had a school event and then a city board event with Fire Pup. And ironically, Brandon Barrage, one of our newer firefighters, of course, got picked to wear the Fire Pup costume. Usually the low man gets that, but he puts a new meaning to low man.
He's not a low man.
That's right. So when he came in, I looked up and I'm like, wow, you have got to be the tallest Fire Pup in the world. And that clicked in his mind. And so shortly after that, he applied to the Guinness Book of World Records to seek recognition potentially as the world's tallest career firefighter. That was in April of last year. Well, he just got a response from Guinness, and they confirmed he does qualify for that. However, there's some steps you have to take with a physician, a doctor, measuring in a public place 3 times during the day. So that's what we did yesterday.
Standing up, lying down.
Yes, and we measured him at the doctor's office and then finished last night at the board meeting.
Now, I noticed you had a piece of tape on the floor and a piece of tape on the wall. So was that from another measurement?
We put that as a base to start with. We marked that at 7 feet on the floor and 7 feet on the wall.
Okay, all right.
Because we knew he was right there close to it.
Right.
We just had to have a point of reference, and that's following the rules of Guinness. They require you to mark the wall and mark the floor before he lays down, and you actually have to video the marking of the floor and all that. So it's pretty intense.
And I thought I heard you say that he was probably about 5 inches above the competition.
Yeah, he's well above what they have right now. So we feel confident that he'll be getting a confirmation letter pretty quick.
Yes,
Okay,
6'11"
now
and 9/16.
the question that looms large here is this young man, no matter his size, still has to go through the same rigors of competition and physical aptitude and stuff as a smaller, more agile man might have to do to be a competent and confident firefighter.
Yes, and he has attended several classes, and he had some trouble at first. His leg, his inseam is 44 inches.
Are you kidding me?
That's something.
So he has to bend and go in some tight spaces in a confined space type rescue, and he has to learn how to twist his hips to make where his knees can bend the right way to get through those turns.
Somewhere.
So it was a little bit of a struggle for him, but his team there at the station worked with him every day to get him prepared for that. And they actually did a little demonstration yesterday on video of him coming through what they call the rabbit hole, where it drop down, you're simulating like you're in an attic and you get trapped and you have to get back out. And he did it a couple of times, and it's amazing how he can go through the same hole that's tight for me. He can go through that same hole. It's amazing. He sticks his hands out in front of him, and it's just amazing.
My favorite story is he eats standing up and off the top of the refrigerator.
Yeah, so. He does use the refrigerator as a table, the top of the refrigerator. Yeah, that's true.
We got some good photos of that yesterday too. So
I love it.
But then we also have some great publicity that came kind of vis-a-vis the great fire department with Dustin Lynch.
We did. Dustin was in town recently doing his concert.
Right.
On the 17th of December. He always asks for toys to be brought to the concert. We usually get, 300 or 400 nice toys to give out into Toy Drive, which was another huge success this year. But he came a little early and toured around town and visited KK's pawn shop where he bought his first guitar and went to his old home place out off Riley Creek Road. And then he came to the fire station because one of his songs is Mama's House is the title. One of the lines is, I'd burn the whole town down if it weren't for Mama's house. So he came and we rode him on the fire engine and did some fun stuff with him. Him and Cody, the host of Top 20 Countdown on CMT.
Right.
And that was aired Saturday at 8 a.m. and Tullahoma was mentioned continuously for 3 hours. It was amazing. I got calls from several family members and friends out of state that saw it. That like, what is going on? So it was.
That's
pretty
wonderful.
Neat. Yeah, it was pretty neat.
Yeah, like I said, so there's a lot of great interest in Tullahoma and people wanting to invest in Tullahoma. So we are experiencing a little bit of growth. We'll have the census coming up in this year, 2020, starting about April. So we want to make sure everybody turns in their forms so we all get counted, so we all get
that's
tax
very
dollars
important.
that are coming due to us. But and so in about 2 years after that, we'll actually get to see what type of growth we're experiencing here in Tullahoma.
Good.
And talking about publicity, there's a lot of emphasis right now on our downtown core area, and so we've got some projects that we'll be unveiling and launching closer to May with some new branding and turning downtown into an arts and entertainment district. And so look to that. And it looks like are we out of time?
It looks like we're close to out of time.
Man,
but one thing I want to mention that I found interesting is last night during the board meeting, and you folks need to watch the board meetings. We'll replay that today and numerous times in the week. One of the downtown property owners donated a piece of property to the city where next to where Clyde Phillips used to be, and Lydia's was, and then there was a beauty parlor in there at one time, and so I'm interested to see what the city's ideas are going to be to come up with for that piece of property to add another little spark down there. It's great what's going on.
I hope it's going to be a great catalyst.
Yeah, sure will. My friend, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for what you do, both of you, and I know you're always welcome. And tell Melissa I said hello, and I thank her for getting you here.
Absolutely.
Because if it wasn't for her, you probably wouldn't be here.
She's a blessing.
That's Melissa Allen. She's his keeper.
That's right.
So, folks, we'll be right back after these messages.
Clayton has been Tullahoma's family shoe store for over 100 years with a reputation for fashion and personal service. And the tradition continues today. Stop by Clayton and see our large selection of fine shoes.
We're gonna pick your style. We're gonna make you smile. Service and quality at Clayton Shoe Store. We're gonna pick your style.
Ah, the glory days. Running to daylight on the gridiron and chasing a ball with a mind of its own. Cheering the team to victory and marching to the beat of your own drum. Memories that last a lifetime. But sometimes we're reminded of our glory days in ways we'd rather forget. Get back in the game. The rehab team at Life Care Center of Tullahoma is ready to help you live and play well.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
Hello there again, everybody. Good to see you this morning. We're glad to be here. You know, this is the beginning of the 4th year of the Millennium Moment. You'd think they'd run out of material, but we've just scratched the surface because I told you every week this is not the end of the story, but there's a whole lot more to come. And indeed, it's coming right along. We have thought many times about the word corner. You know, you ever find yourself in a corner someplace and hey, it's right over in the corner, pick it up, or you got to put a stamp on the upper right-hand corner of your envelope before you mail it. And the old railroad story is that, hey, Nellie, head for the roundhouse, Nellie, the brakeman can't corner you there. Well, we live in a world of corners, and one of the most important corners in our community in Tullahoma that's loaded with history is right smack in the center of town at the corner of Atlantic Street and Lincoln Street. And years ago, the freight depot was right in the middle of Davidson Park, which in recent years became a parking lot between the railroad and Atlantic Street. But that corner has always been filled with a lot of interesting activity and very historic part, because that corner is at the corner of the widest street in the world, as reported by Robert Ripley in his 1934 column in the newspaper. They asked Robert Ripley in his column, believe it or not, where the longest street is Rio de Janeiro in South America. But the widest street in the world is in only Tullahoma in the world, Atlantic Street. Curb to curb, 385 feet wide. Well, what has that got to do with corners? Well, that's the corner of it because that's the very middle of town. And way back in the teens and 20s, the City Hall was at the corner of Atlantic and Lincoln Street between what is now the 101 Business Center building and the railroad. And it was a two-story concrete block building where they had the police department and the city recorder was there, and the garage for the city's fire truck and the volunteer fire department was all in that same building. Held city court upstairs, and at one time the upstairs of the city hall there at that corner was the public library for several years. But that played a very important part in our community, and many people would say, where are we going to meet before we go to the show or go shop? We'll meet at the corner of Atlantic and Lincoln Street. Diagonally across from the City Hall was the famous Taylor Drug Store that is now the home for the Veranda Motel Hotel at the corner of Atlantic and Lincoln Street. Now, the across the street from the Veranda or the old Taylor's Drug Store was the Traders National Bank for many, many, many years, and the town clock was there hanging on the very corner of the Traders National Bank building. Upstairs there was a dentist, Dr. Graham had his dental office up there, and there was attorneys up there, and then the Taylor's Pharmacy though was the spot for a social life and people to gather. They had a soda fountain in there, and sandwiches and eatery and sold papers and magazines, and everything was right there. Very important corner in all of our lives. And I'd like to continue this with other corners in the immediate future, but right now this is not the end of the story, but there's a lot more to come, and we hope all of you have a real, real good day.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
Welcome back. I have just met the most delightful lady, Miss Gina Witten, and she's here in Tullahoma working with the Art Center now, and you've come a long way from North Carolina to
Tullahoma,
yeah.
By way of Wartrace.
By way of Wartrace, and we're just delighted to have you. And the big thing that we're going to talk about is the fact that you're opening a class.
I'm opening up classes at the Art Center in Tullahoma. We're going to have many different classes. I teach mostly metal clay, fused art, wire wrapping, and many other classes.
When does that class open? Is it February?
The first class is already full. It's February the 18th. It's a metal clay class, which I'll do a demo on in just a second. And the second class is full also. It's a glass fusing class. The next class that's open is February the 1st. It's wire wrapping. And then we'll go from there. There'll be many different classes, and you can go right on the website.
That's wonderful. And all that's there. Look that up and go on the website and be sure and attend exhibitions at the Art Center.
Oh yes, they have many exhibitions
Did you
coming
make
up
those
too.
earrings?
I did.
I love those.
Thank you.
There's a stone up here, and then there's the silver.
The silver clay. And this is one of the first class that I'm doing. We're going to make a little pair of earrings. They'll use different stones, but make their own silver.
Their own silver, which is a real classy piece of work.
Well, and the silver is such a new medium. People don't even know about it. It's silver in clay form. You actually mold it like clay.
That's interesting.
I'm going to do a little bit of a demo here.
So is that clay in that bottle?
This is clay in here. This is some of the silver clay. And it's actually clay. As you can see, I can just mold it. Now what I would do with this clay to make a little earring is I would roll it into a ball, take my roller, roll out the clay, and put it in a little mold. The little mold, I'd put it in a dehydrator, let it dry, and this is what it comes out like.
How long does it have to go in the dehydrator?
It stays in the dehydrator about an hour.
Okay.
It comes out, I call it bisque form, but because this is a new medium, there's not a name for it. It's a very breakable form of the clay. After you dry it, this is what it looks like. You're then going to take your piece and you're going to use a small torch and fire it.
Okay.
And what happens is when you fire this piece, and it takes about 2 minutes, so we're not going to do the total time, but I just wanted to give you an idea. What's going to happen is the binder that's in the clay will fire away and leave you with the pure silver. So I'm going to fire this long enough for the binder to fire away. See the flame coming up?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is the binder firing away. And then you would see the piece start to turn white. There it is.
I'm amazed at that process.
After this, you're going to do this for about 2.5 minutes. Fire the piece, okay? When you're done, you're going to take the piece and use a wire brush and brush off the residue that's on the piece, and you're going to come out with this.
So you brush for quite a while, and it comes out a silver piece.
It's pure silver,
That is
99.9% pure silver.
It's hard to believe that
It was
It's
started
such a
in
simple
Japan,
process, yeah.
and they took old x-rays and took the silver out of the x-rays and saved it and made the metal clays.
That is interesting.
AIDA Corporation is one of the places that first started making it in Mitsubishi.
Yeah.
And that's where it originated in the mid-90s.
And obviously you have created these beautiful pieces here.
Yes, I did. All these pieces here are done with the pure silver. The clay now does come in
a pretty ring. I'm sorry, I should leave it alone so you can see it. And then this one with the horse. You obviously have a mold.
I make molds. I make molds out of a rubber silicone.
Okay.
And some of the pieces I carve in bone or wood, and then make a mold of them. It's like my bee piece.
Those are beautiful. And the stones, this one has a stone in it.
This stone I actually made. This is a
Did you
piece of
polish that out?
fused glass.
Fused glass.
That's one of the classes I'm teaching very soon. You make your fused glass pendant, and then you can wire wrap it.
So if a person has signed up for this class, do you mind telling us what it costs to do this particular class?
It makes a difference in what kind of medium I'm using. If I'm doing the pure silver clay, the class is a little expensive, but it's well worth it. It's $100 for the class, and your materials fee runs about $40.
Okay.
And it does fluctuate because silver fluctuates, and you're
out
working.
of that, you're having pieces that you could sell or just keep to cherish because you created.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Now the clay has come, it comes in different forms. It comes in copper, bronze, brass, and even steel. So we can do classes that are less expensive, but you can still
And use the same process.
And use the same process.
But the silver is obviously the medium that most people would want to work
Right,
in. It's so
right.
beautiful.
Yes.
When'd you get into that? When did you start
Well,
doing
I
this?
started right before it came to this country, and I had always wanted to do jewelry. I've been an artist all my life, but I wanted to do jewelry, and I took soldering class after soldering class. Could not get the soldering down.
It was
So
a tough process.
I heard about this, and then I started taking lessons. And before I knew it, they asked me to be a master instructor,
Well, I'm
and
not surprised at that.
I had to create pieces to qualify for that. So I was one of the first 6 master
Do you have
instructors.
a favorite piece that you've created?
I do. I have a vessel that I created.
To put something in.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the first thing you did, or is it just
Oh,
something
no.
that you particularly love?
It's something I did in the process of going from senior to master instructor,
I see.
but it was an incredible piece.
Well, I hope a lot of you will, if you don't get into the class, at least come and see exhibits.
Yes.
And you all will be probably selling some of the products, is that correct?
Yes, we have a gallery and we have a gift shop.
There's always nice things to buy, and the beauty of that is you're buying real things that
Right.
have been created by an artist, which you can't go and buy at just any store.
Right. And not only that, but then you can come take the classes and create your own.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, at the Art Center. So I think that's great. And the reason I do that is because I need to help people be creative in this day and time.
And you need to fulfill your passion.
That's it.
And keep it up. I think there's so many things that can help a person artistically if they get involved in making something or learning to paint or learning to sing. We'll just throw that out there.
I wonder why.
All right, remember, Tullahoma Art Center is doing some fabulous things. Gina, thank you so much for coming.
Well,
Any
thank
last
you for
words
having
that
me.
you want to throw out? We got.
Come and spark your soul with the classes.
I
Get
love it.
creative.
Thanks a lot. We'll be back.
Keith Barnett here at Russell Barnett Kia in Tullahoma. Check out the 2019 fully loaded V6 Kia Sorento, up to $6,400 off original MSRP. That's Russell Barnett Kia in Tullahoma, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. And remember, why buy anywhere else?
My wife Jackie has always been the life of the party, but things changed when she couldn't be as active anymore.
They told me I needed a double knee replacement.
It's not as big a deal as it used to be, but she still needed to go to rehab.
I was amazed at how good the therapists were at Life Care. They took really good care of me.
They took excellent care of her, and now she's back doing the things she loves, and that makes everyone happy.
Life Care Center of Tullahoma wants you to get active and live well.
So you've been meaning to do something healthy, commune with nature, get outdoors and meet new people. We have the perfect solution. Come hike with us. You can find a Tennessee Trails Association chapter near you, including Clarksville, Columbia Franklin, Highland Rim, Jackson, Knoxville, Oak Ridge, Memphis, Murfreesboro, Nashville, Plateau at Crossville, and Upper Cumberland. We're on the web at TennesseeTrails.org. It's fun, it's stress-free, and it's good for you. See you on the trails.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
All right, we're back, and interesting.
Fascinating.
Clay.
I didn't know that was a possibility. That's interesting, really.
No, it's
I loved
very,
it.
very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And what all goes on around here is, as we say, we had Winston on and the fire chief and different ones. Many, many incredible things happen in Tullahoma that just don't happen in normal little small towns. That's why we're on the cover of magazines and in the Guinness Book of World Records.
And we are the only Tullahoma in the world. I still think that's
right.
That's a record.
And the thing about the Art Center is, folks, when the National Watercolor Society traveling show leaves and travels around the United States of America,
they stop here.
It stops in Tullahoma. It doesn't stop in Nashville. It doesn't stop in Atlanta. It stops in Tullahoma. Imagine that, how fortunate we are. Henry Cho's is going to be at South Jackson Civic Center.
If you want to laugh, you've got to come.
Keep up with what goes on around town. The Science Center we have here is incredible. There's so many great things happening, and be part of it. That's why we love being where we are.
And buy Tullahoma. If you want to buy
Tullahoma.
Come to
I've got a
Tullahoma.
shirt that says Tullahoma, H-O-M-E.
Home.
Where I call home. Tullahoma, the only town I know of that's got home in the middle of it.
You're right.
Peggy Burton, I'm so glad to be back and look at you.
It's Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. That's a whole state, though.
Yeah.
We got all that wrapped up in one town, folks.
We got to go.
We love you. We'll see you next time.